Welcome to the Urban Monk. I'm Pedram Shojai, and today we're talking about psychedelic drugs. Yeah, they used to be party drugs, and now in labs all across the country, they're being used medicinally. We're going to talk to some experts who have been in the field, who have been looking at people getting amazing results with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a whole host of other existential type conditions and things that are really hard to treat in traditional medicine. We're seeing some incredibly positive results. Let's be clear, we are not talking about recreational use here. This is treatment for serious illness. So let's take a look at these drugs and see how research is revealing that in some cases, they can be a very powerful path to healing. So our first guest is someone who is no stranger to the treatment of addiction. She is a psychiatrist by trade, and she's a dear friend of mine, Dr. Hyla Cass. She's written a couple very inspirational books, the first one called Natural Highs, and then The Addicted Brain and How to Break Free. She's been a trusted authority and a voice in this space for some time now, and we are so happy to have you here. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
We're looking at psychedelics, right? And it's an altered state, it's a brain state, and we're seeing fantastic results with some of these drugs in some really serious clinically diagnosable conditions. So first of all, is it time now to take a new look at these psychedelics?
Psychedelics, I've had an interest in psychedelics just like I've had an interest in nutrients for the brain. It's all about brain chemistry, and we can influence brain chemistry. And we have really amazing products that have MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, that have really created wonderful healing for people. The drugs, the medications that have been used in psychiatry have terrible side effects, and they're not all that effective. Now, I have to say they've been life-saving at times, and I'm not, quote, against medications, but I just know that we have far better things to use first.
So one of the things that we saw is the 60s and 70s kind of kept rolling, and the party kept going, and people got into trouble, and it created all these negative stigmas. And now that this research is starting to happen, there's a clearly defined definition of how we're doing this. Let's take a departure from recreational use and talk about how can we even look at this stuff scientifically.
Well, these products have an influence on the brain. And in the words of Aldous Huxley, they open the doors of perception. These are perceptions that we actually could have all the time, but we're wired to be selective. So when it's opened up by these substances, and each one in a different way, we then have access to all sorts of amazing, amazing information. What's wonderful is you can take someone who's bored, depressed, unhappy, and they don't quite know what's missing. They know something is missing. And when they take a psychedelic, MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca, they then have a connection to a larger reality, a context that is really a sacred context. It's a spiritual place. They get in touch with some very primal feelings, very basic human feelings and needs that aren't really part of ordinary reality if we don't attend to them.
So there's this stigma that's out there, the bad trip. That is a psychological crisis, right? But then here we're talking about being there with some clinically trained psychologists.
See, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. The point is the psychotherapy, not the product. The product is the catalyst. And then all this material starts to come up, and you have a professional there to help guide you through this amazing, amazing territory, rather than just being assaulted by all of it, by old memories, bad memories, and you need guidance. Now, I have to say that the psychedelics themselves do carry some mitigating aspects. For example, with MDMA, it actually shuts down the fear center, the amygdala, in the left side of the brain, so you have less fear, and it opens up a sense of love and trust. So if you've had a traumatic experience, you're still going to be able to see it, to experience it, but you won't have that terrible fear, that overwhelming fear that you have had in the past. You have a different perspective. So that's one thing, that's the product itself doing it. Then you have a therapist who can guide you through it and help you with your perspective and then carry you through afterwards to integrate it back into your life.
So where are you seeing the most promising stuff here? I mean, obviously it sounds like MDMA with post-traumatic stress disorder. Psilocybin and some of the, Stan Grof did some great work on LSD back in the day. Now DMT or dimethyltryptamine, ayahuasca. We're seeing all kinds of activity. Where do you see some of the promise here?
If you take MDMA, what's really amazing is how it actually works to, in a very short time, help to turn around post-traumatic stress disorder that has not been helped by talk therapy, by medications. In fact, the medications will often make it worse, and you'll get medication on top of medication on top of medication, and the person ends up really non-functioning. On the other hand, they can then leave their medication behind because it wasn't working anyway, except for creating a lot of side effects, and really begin to have a life. And that's miraculous. So many returning vets or people who have had traumatic childhoods, sexual abuse, so many really traumatic things happen to people. And our brains are built, unfortunately, to carry that. It can carry it for a long time. And when we have something this useful to break that pattern, I mean, we really need to use it.
I'm so thankful that doctors like yourself have been really holding this down and carrying the torch on the subject. And I want to be clear, you're not here saying, why don't you go get some recreational street drug and go party? You're here as a physician saying, look, there's some really promising stuff here, and so we shouldn't throw this out as a drug class.
Unfortunately, psychedelics got a bad rap. I remember my daughter, when she was 10 years old, coming home from school. Mom, do you know that if you take MDMA, it drains all your spinal fluid? Oh, really, honey? I don't think so. But this is what kids were taught at school. And that's not good, because we have a very useful tool here that is being disregarded and disrespected. And so we need the proper education. And we also, I think, good shows like this are going to help people understand that there is a positive side to the use of psychedelic mind-altering substances.
It may or may not be for everyone, and we're figuring it out because the science is happening in front of us now. But the promise is there, and I think that that's incredibly exciting. So I really, really want to thank you for being here and keep doing the good work that you do.
Thank you.
So next up, we have someone who's been on the front lines of this for some time, doing the research, so stay with us, we're about to dig deeper. Our next guest has been in the trenches on this subject for a very long time, Dr. Charles Grob. He's a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at UCLA's David Geffen School of Medicine. He's the author or co-author of over 90 studies on this subject since the 80s. He has been the man in this space for a very long time. Excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. So there is such a charge around this subject, and there's a negative perception that's come. What has really shifted in the dynamic here that has now made this research friendly?
The role of psychedelics in the cultural turmoil of the 60s was, in many respects, overwhelming phenomena, and I believe our culture was not prepared for the full range of effects of psychedelics. There was a great deal of reckless and even irresponsible use. There was a lot of misunderstanding as to how to adequately contain these experiences, how to channel these experiences. And by the late 60s, early 70s, it had become politically untenable to continue to conduct this research. So they were simply, the existing studies were put to rest, and the field stayed dormant until the early 90s.
How did it take so long? I mean, these things have been around, since time immemorial,
right, exactly.
Really.
It took about 20 years for many of these fears to be put to rest, and then my colleagues and I have made the case, and I believe we've made that case successfully, that we can do this work in an objective, rigorous manner while maintaining strong safety parameters. And the icing on the cake is that it turns out we are observing very effective outcomes in regards to whatever psychological condition we're treating.
That is so encouraging for all of us, obviously. So what are the specific drugs? Are we, what are you looking at with your colleagues right now? Which one?
I conducted a series of studies of ayahuasca in Brazil, specifically in the Brazilian Amazon city of Manaus back in the 1990s. We conducted a study around 8 to 10 years ago using a psilocybin treatment model for people with advanced cancer with overwhelming reactive existential anxiety. Our current study is an MDMA treatment model for autistic adults with social anxiety.
This is really encouraging because MDMA is like the super party drug too, and the misuse of MDMA has obviously become a problem. But the origins of MDMA originally were really developed in this therapeutic capacity, right? And there's so much PTSD. The treatment for it has been very difficult, and MDMA is also showing some promise there from what I've heard. I mean, what's happening in that space?
There have been a series of very interesting studies conducted by a psychiatrist named Michael Mithofer in South Carolina, treating people with chronic refractory post-traumatic stress disorder. By refractory, we mean not responsive to other treatments. He's administered an MDMA treatment model, which is the judicious use of MDMA 2 or 3 sessions within the context of an ongoing psychotherapy, and he's found honestly, astonishingly positive results. He's established good safety, and he's looking at very, very effective outcome. Individuals becoming far less symptomatic in regards to their PTSD, far less intrusive thoughts of the trauma, less disruptive bad dreams or nightmares, more effective and confident functioning in the day-to-day world. The Mithofer studies thus far are yielding very positive results and have led to an expansion into several other sites around the country and also in Western Canada.
How far out are we reaching? Like, I mean, are the initial results positive, and what's kind of the longest tail on this? Are we a few years out?
Oh, we're still at least several years out. In the mid-'80s, MDMA was put in the most highly scheduled drug category, and as a result, it's become one of the most out-of-control drugs, used by millions of people worldwide, often taking an unreliable, perhaps dangerous product in unsafe settings, not individuals often not cognizant of how to minimize risk, and also taking the attention away and slowing down the evolution of really where it has its most viable role, which is as a therapeutic modality.
I love the fact that a psychiatrist from UCLA is looking at this. It really, I think it's heralding in a new era of where science and spirituality are walking in a way where we're trying to just understand the human condition. And so, such a fan of your work. So where do you see this going in the next few years? Do you see any of the current laws as a hindrance to this? Is that starting to move with your feasibility?
Well, hallucinogens and MDMA are Schedule I drugs. By definition, a Schedule I drug is a drug with no medical utility and no context for safe use. I think if nothing else, these studies have demonstrated that these compounds need to be moved out of a Schedule I to a Schedule II or III to facilitate more human research and really to more fully explore the range of effects and the potentials to alleviate suffering.
It sounds like we're on our way, and it sounds like we all owe you a debt of gratitude, you and your colleagues, for really blazing this trail with the scientific rigor in hand. So I want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
Right. No, it's been an honor to be in the position to conduct this work and really to establish a sufficient foothold with this research that the younger investigators coming up behind us will have a field to enter and to really carry the work forward even further into the future.
Well, they will be standing on the shoulders of giants. Absolutely. So our next guest is going to be Rachel Hope, who actually suffered with PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, and was part of a study that used MDMA to treat her condition. Thank you so much for inviting me into your house. I know this has been quite a ride for you. It's really interesting, and it's obviously something that a lot of people don't know about. So I'd really like to kind of get into this, a little bit of your backstory. Can you tell me how you came to suffer with PTSD?
Well, I mean, I had a terrible childhood. It was severe neglect, severe abuse. I mean, all the nightmare things you think about, pretty substantial sexual abuse, sexual trauma. And I don't remember not being symptomatic, really anxious and terrified and having nightmares. And then when I was 11 years old, I was hit by a truck.
Wow.
And the thing you never want to happen to your kid happened to me. And it was, flatlining on the side of the road, my head bleeding out, and I was temporarily partially paralyzed for a while until my spine kind of healed. I was young enough that I could come back from an injury that puts most people in a wheelchair for life.
A lot of our popular understanding of PTSD is from veterans, and you have the same type of diagnosis.
Yeah, it's the same type in the sense that it manifests in a lot of the same symptoms, but in my case it was almost more severe because it was a considered complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It wasn't just being involved in a violent situation or having an accident. It was like sexual trauma, severe neglect, and a bad accident and being witnessed or having violence perpetrated on me. So I had this whole spectrum of just like all the really horrible things that can happen to you before you're like even out of school. So so in a sense that I relate to veterans because we have the same symptoms, but the way I got there is different. And I think a lot of people don't know they have post-traumatic stress disorder because they don't know that they can get it from being raped, from being in an accident, from seeing somebody beaten up. Those things can cause post-traumatic stress disorder.
Had you been treated for this prior to this study?
I tried everything. I was a great psychotherapist. I've been in and out of hospitals, state or private. I took every type of medicine that was prescribed. I had hypnosis, I had rapid eye movement therapy, I had Gestalt therapy, role-playing therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, yoga, acupuncture. I did everything. I couldn't get insurance because I had a pre-existing condition that I got when I was a child. So I spent all this money out of pocket trying to get well, and I just got worse.
Drugs and alcohol, was this a part of your life before this study? How did you get into a psychedelic research thing?
I am the last person you would ever think would be in a study using MDMA to treat PTSD. This was a giant radical leap because I was against drugs completely. I had a hard time even taking prescribed drugs. I didn't drink, didn't smoke. I saw the Oprah show that said these drugs put holes in your brain. I was not interested whatsoever.
So can you describe the way this worked? Like, how does this study even go? Like, were you able to tell that the MDMA was affecting you?
Immediately.
First time?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, it was like 8-hour session in the clinic with doing psychotherapy, but a specialized psychotherapy because it's in conjunction with the medicine, using the medicine as a catalyst. So I did have some preparation where I was clear, I was setting an intention that I wanted to use this medicine to help me recover from post-traumatic stress disorder, and the therapists were like guides, and we were on a team to address these terrible memories I hadn't been able to fully address. And the amazing thing about the medicine is that it's the only medicine that we know of that reduces anxiety without reducing awareness. It heightens awareness and reduces anxiety. So first of all, for the first time in my life, I was able to tell what exactly had happened to me. In some ways, recovered memories that I had been running from and repressing, and actually verbalize to another human being what had happened to me from a place of not being terrified and not re-traumatized. In this therapy session, I could go into my own mind and completely change the story that I told myself. I could reprogram my mind.
How can our viewers get involved? How can we help get this to more people who are suffering?
I wouldn't recommend somebody just trying to get a hold of the medicine. Well, first of all, they're not going to get it. It's very specialized. It's not on the street. What people think is Molly is almost 100% not the true medicine. So that's one thing I want to get clear. Second is, even if they did get a hold of the true medicine, outside the context of this very specialized psychotherapy with 2 therapists in a set and setting that's really idyllic for getting the maximum benefit out of what the collaboration between the patient, the therapist, and the catalyst medicine. That is like the perfect storm, strong enough with enough positive, freeing, consciousness lifting energy that you can heal.
It's a non-addictive type of medicine.
Never have wanted to do it, never have done it again. Other than in the context of the clinical trial, I was given only 3 sessions and I was cured of chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. My symptoms went away 80% right away. And over the next year, with no medication, nothing else happened, I continued to get better. And I was relieved of 90% of my symptoms by a year after my first treatment. I will always have my frightening history and memories, but it's not a disorder that robs me of living a normal life. I don't know if you know this, but over 22 veterans a day kill themselves in America right now. So, and I, being inside that kind of hell myself, every day that this medicine is not available is like a body count to me. I think about it like that because I was so close to taking my own life. But we live in an amazing country where we can make our voices heard in a million different ways. And so for somebody who really wants to help this medicine be available for people who need it sooner, then just blog about it, talk about it, send out links to social media, donate to MAPS, who's basically funded all the research privately. When this medicine finally becomes available, it will be like the only medicine that was gone through all the research on private money. Grandma writing a check, no big endowment fund, no university sponsored it. Little people, the people made this medicine happen. So it's good to know that MAPS is this incredible organization that has dedicated itself to making this medicine available. One of the greatest wounds from PTSD that almost everyone who gets it, whether it's from combat or otherwise, is a terror. Like this incredible sense of disconnection from all humanity, from yourself, from what makes sense, from meaning. And to feel that kind of alienation, it makes it almost impossible to heal. And with this treatment, I felt like I was reintroduced to a sense of connectedness to life, that I had life force back into me. And it was like being let out of a cage and starting to live for the first time. And I can't even begin to tell you what the difference is raising a child, hiding the symptoms of PTSD from that child, or trying to, versus raising my second child, who doesn't have to watch me suffer like that. I mean, that's a gift that I want all, especially mothers, to have, to be free of that and be able to be fully present with their child.
What would your message be to someone who is suffering from PTSD, a message of hope, if you will?
That's the thing. I think if anything I really still suffer from is the fact that people can't just go and get this treatment. And so people that I meet who are suffering and they're hopeless or they're helpless the way I was, they don't feel like living is worthwhile, I'd say, hang on, there's hope. Really, we're very close to having this treatment available, especially for veterans. I think it's going to be within a couple of years. Don't hurt yourself, don't give up, keep going. This works, and it lasts.
Thank you so much for inviting me into your house and giving us a glance into this world. You've really, really been in the trenches, and the promise of what you've gone through is just, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for covering it.
We have a lot of drug laws in this country, and some for very good reason. In the past, we have a vivid and negative experience of how some of these were misused. And that's been with us ever since. But things have changed, and it turns out that I've personally seen people's lives destroyed with bad drugs, and I've also seen people wake up and fundamentally shift for the better. We now have a chance to look at psychedelics again in a new way and find things we never saw before. With less taboo attached to the drugs, like psilocybin, ayahuasca, and the others, it can allow scientists more room for research and really society to change and get some space for real re-examination. That could lead a path of healing for a lot of people. I would like to thank our guests for sharing their time and their expertise with us today. I feel like we've learned a lot. Please let me know your thoughts about what you've seen here and reach out to me on our social channels and let me know how you feel. How did this sit with you? For the urban monk in all of us, I'm Dr. Pedram Shojai. See you again soon.